Welcome to the deep dive. We're really going into some challenging and I think profoundly complex territory today.
Definitely.
We're stepping into the shadows, really, of some of the most, well, disturbing cases in recent history. You know, the events often explained away as just lone nuts or
Yeah.
monsters.
Right, the easy answers.
Exactly. But what if those narratives, the ones we all kind of accept, what if they're incomplete? Or, and this is more unsettling, what if they're deliberately misleading? Our deep dive today is based on Dave McGowan's book, Programmed to Kill: The Politics of Serial Murder. And it presents, well, let's just say an alternative, definitely a highly provocative view of these events.
It really does. It's meticulously researched, and it draws these unsettling connections between infamous serial murder cases, mind control, organized crime, even high-level corruption.
So our mission today is really to distill the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from McGowan's material for you. We want to help you understand what this book is truly implying.
Yeah, what's underneath the surface of these official stories?
And we need to say right up front, the content we're discussing is, well, it's disturbing. It challenges some deeply held beliefs about how our world works, about who's responsible for its darkest acts.
It's not comfortable territory.
Not at all. So our role here is just to impartially present the information from this source material. We want to allow you, our listener, to consider the arguments, the evidence McGowan presents, without us endorsing any particular viewpoint.
We're simply conveying the ideas that are contained in the original book. That's the goal.
Okay, let's dive in. Part 1. The shadowy world of mind control is beyond fiction. Let's start with the skepticism, because I think that's where most people are. McGowan's book points this out, right? That most people are naturally quite skeptical of the notion that someone's thoughts and actions can be controlled by unseen actors.
Yeah, it feels like something out of a movie.
Totally. Especially in Western culture, this idea of free will is like firmly indoctrinated. So these theories of mind control seem inimical to the omnipresent mantra that we are all responsible for our own actions. You know, it feels like it goes against everything we're taught.
It absolutely does. And that knee-jerk reaction, that dismissal, is exactly what the book pushes back against. McGowan asserts pretty strongly that, contrary to perceptions, mind control is not a fictional creation of novelists and Hollywood screenwriters.
Okay. So he's saying it's real.
He's saying there's a paper trail. He emphasizes a substantial paper trail, establishing that the U.S. intelligence community has devoted a vast amount of both human and financial resources over a period of several decades to the study of mind control.
Oh, decades.
Decades. And this wasn't some, back alley operation. He notes that luminaries of numerous social sciences have been recruited and co-opted into this research.
Luminaries, like respected academics.
That's the implication. It suggests this field, as disturbing as it sounds, has a very real institutional history within established government agencies.
Okay, that definitely puts a different spin on it. Let's unpack some of the early evidence he talks about. He introduces George Estabrooks, a psychologist, a hypnotist, worked with U.S. intelligence.
That's right, George Estabrooks. His 1943 book, Hypnotism, apparently teased his audience by noting that the intelligent reader will sense that much more is withheld than has been told.
So even back then, he was hinting there was more to it.
Exactly. Like a veiled admission suggesting the blueprint for psychological manipulation was being laid out, even while the public was, kept in the dark about the full implications.
So what was the blueprint? What was the methodology?
Well, despite the omissions, Estabrooks apparently laid out the basic methodology of mind control. McGowan describes this as a two-step process, basically. First, enhancing an unwitting subject's natural ability to dissociate.
Dissociate, like zoning out.
Kind of, but taken to an extreme. Essentially, creating the condition we used to call multiple personality disorder, now known as dissociative identity disorder, D-Day.
Okay, so creating alters.
Right. And then the second step is controlling that subject's dissociative states by creating one or more alter personalities that are effectively under the control of others and that are unknown to the core personality.
So you create these separate personalities and then someone else controls them without the main person knowing.
That's the core idea presented. It's not just suggestion. It's about fracturing the psyche to create controllable internal identities.
That is terrifying. And the application for this was creating super spies,
That's the term Estabrooks himself apparently used. These were meant to be unwitting agents who were willing to follow any orders unquestioningly.
Unwitting so they wouldn't know they were agents.
Exactly. Imagine someone carrying out a complex, maybe dangerous mission, and afterwards having zero conscious memory of doing it. McGowan notes they were seen as ideal couriers.
Couriers for what?
Sensitive information. They could be fed sensitive information while in a controlled dissociative state and thereafter have no conscious awareness that they were transporting important data.
So if they were caught,
They'd have nothing to reveal. Even under intense interrogation, the core personality would be genuinely unaware.
wow. Okay, the ethical dimension here, or lack thereof.
It's a void, really. Estabrooks himself apparently acknowledged war is indeed a grim business, sort of justifying the work. But then, and this is chilling, the book says he endorsed, including using children who are notoriously easy to hypnotize as research subjects.
Children. He endorsed using children for this.
That's what the source claims. The idea that children, the most vulnerable, were considered viable subjects, it lays a really disturbing foundation for understanding just how far these programs might have gone.
Okay, let's connect this dissociation idea back to something maybe more relatable. Does it happen naturally?
Yeah, the book asks exactly that. Do dissociative states occur naturally in the human species? And the answer is yes. Think about driving on autopilot. You get somewhere and realize you don't actually remember the last few miles.
Oh yeah, definitely done that.
Or just daydreaming, spacing out.
Yeah.
Gowan suggests if that's happened to you, you've experienced a dissociative state, like driving in a fugue state with amnesia, where maybe an alter personality briefly took the wheel, metaphorically speaking.
Okay, so it's a natural human thing.
It is. But that natural ability becomes the gateway for weaponization, according to the book. McGowan states that the naturally occurring ability to dissociate can be enhanced.
Enhanced, how?
Albeit with the caveat that enhancing that ability generally requires the infliction of severe trauma, preferably during the vulnerable childhood years.
Wait, severe trauma. That's how you enhance it.
That's the crucial dark detail presented. That the foundation for creating these controlled alters involves profound, sustained abuse, especially during childhood, leaving someone psychologically fragmented and therefore susceptible to external control.
That's deeply unsettling.
It is, and the book brings in another figure to bolster this picture. Paul Verdier, another psychiatrist hypnotist, author of Brainwashing and the Cults, an expose on capturing the human mind.
Okay, and what did he say?
Verdier stated pretty bluntly, it must be accepted that brainwashing is now being used here in the United States by devious persons with personal gain in mind. He saw it as an active domestic threat.
By devious persons, not just governments.
That's the implication. And what's really compelling is the parallel Verdier observed. He noted that threats of death are used as a basic tool by brainwashing communists, and that sometimes they'd casually execute prisoners for the apparent effect it has on others, just to keep the stress levels high, unpredictable. And McGowan makes this connection. The actions that Verdier predictably attributed to brainwashing communists precisely mirror the stories that have been told repeatedly by self-described survivors of ritual abuse.
Ritual abuse survivors. How so?
They talk about frequent death threats against themselves, their families, and the horror of being forced witnessing of and even participate in the killing of others.
Wow, so the same methods, essentially.
It suggests a shared, systematic methodology of control through trauma, regardless of who the perpetrators are supposed to be. Communists, cults, the underlying technique seems disturbingly similar according to this analysis.
Okay, so that lays the groundwork for the theory. Let's move into part 2. The pedophocracy, organized child abuse, trafficking, and the idea of complicity.
Right. Moving from the theory to the grim reality presented in the book.
And McGowan starts with a really shocking example from Europe, the Marc Dutroux case in Belgium. He calls it unresolved because of a steel veil drawn over the facts at the highest level.
Yeah, Dutroux wasn't just some low-life criminal. He was technically unemployed, on welfare, but owned at least 6 houses, lived quite lavishly.
6 houses? How?
The book states his income came from child sex slaves, child prostitution, and child pornography. And many of his houses, though appearing empty, were specifically set up as, well, torture and imprisonment centers.
Oh my God. And the complicity part.
This is where it gets deeply alarming. McGowan details how authorities nevertheless failed to act on the information or acted on it in ways that implied either complete incompetence or police complicity.
Like what? What did they fail to do?
Okay, get this. Police ignored tips about secret cellars in his houses, Even worse, a videotape of the dungeon being constructed was actually seized in one of the earlier searches, but nobody watched it.
They had a tape of the dungeon being built and didn't watch it.
That's the claim. And the book states watching that tape could have saved the lives of 2 children. It points to a deliberate pattern of inaction, not just mistakes.
That's not incompetence. That sounds intentional.
That's certainly the implication McGowan draws. And the alleged cover-up goes wider. An accomplice confessed to an orgy at a Belgian chateau who attended. Government officials, a former European commissioner, and a number of law enforcement officers.
So high-level people involved directly.
And according to a Belgian senator quoted, these weren't isolated parties. They were part of a system which operates to this day and is used to blackmail the highly placed people who take part.
Blackmail. So it's a control mechanism using these horrific acts.
Exactly. A system designed to compromise and control powerful people through their darkest secrets.
And the follow-up. Was anyone held accountable?
Well, that's revealing, too. A parliamentary inquiry identified 30 officials who failed to uncover Dutroux's misdeeds. A year later, none face repercussions. And claims that recovered bodies were too decomposed to test for DNA, directly contradicted by autopsy reports saying the bodies were not decomposed.
So inconsistencies, contradictions.
And delays. Critical hair samples had still not been analyzed years later. It really begs the question, why suppress information and protect people if not to maintain some larger hidden system?
And this isn't just Belgium, right? The book suggests this is wider.
Yes, it highlights a Latvian child prostitution and pornography scandal. A parliamentary commission there linked the country's prime minister, justice minister, other high officials.
And what happened?
The allegations were swiftly dismissed as communist propaganda.
There's that again. Label it and dismiss it.
It's a recurring theme. McGowan points out using political labels to immediately discredit serious accusations without a real investigation.
Okay, let's bring this to the U.S.
Yeah.
McGowan talks about a case in Texas.
Yeah, Thomas and Janice Reedy of Fightworth. They apparently made millions of dollars from Landslide Productions, a child porn business. Millions. And this wasn't small scale. It was a portal to more than 5,700 websites with names such as Child Rape and Cyber Lolita. And it was horrifyingly built with money raised from the torture, rape, and sexual abuse of children as young as 2.
Children as young as 2. That's just monstrous.
The scale and brutality are staggering. It shows how organized and, frankly, how profitable these exploitation rings can be.
And in the U.S. context, the legal side, there was a Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah, this is pretty shocking. McGowan points to a surprisingly strong defense of the right to free speech from the Supreme Court in 2002. They extended the ban on prosecutions of virtual child pornography to all 50 states.
Virtual child porn, meaning computer-generated.
Well, that was the idea, but the ruling made it much harder to prosecute any online child pornography. It left prosecutors struggling to prove that children portrayed on an internet sex site are real children. Essentially, it created a loophole.
Protecting the pornographers, basically.
That was the practical effect, making prosecution far more difficult.
The book also talks about a pattern of trivializing abuse allegations in the media.
Yes, a pattern of trivialization of child molestation evidence, particularly in high-profile cases. He cites the Woody Allen and Mia Farrow custody case. The media focused on the custody battle, but almost entirely ignored the fact that Allen was also charged with molesting his own 7-year-old adopted daughter, Dylan.
But he was charged?
He was investigated. And according to the book, Connecticut authorities do believe Woody did molest her but decided not to prosecute anyway. The stated reason was to spare the child further trauma.
So they believed it happened but didn't prosecute.
Right. McGowan uses this to illustrate a societal blindness. Maybe a refusal to confront these allegations, especially with powerful or famous figures. Public perception might get prioritized over justice.
And there are other examples.
Yeah, the Menendez brothers. Their claims of abuse by their parents were never fully investigated, and they were just viciously demonized for even making the claims. Michael Jackson got the kid gloves treatment, facing charges. His sister, LaToya, ridiculed by the media for talking about alleged sexual abuse within the Jackson family.
So a pattern of discrediting or ignoring accusers, especially if the accused is famous.
That's the pattern McGowan highlights. A reluctance, or maybe active suppression, preventing serious investigation of these claims against the powerful.
What about academic trends? The book mentions something disturbing there, too.
Yeah, this is really unsettling. McGowan points to interviews in a Dutch pro-pedophilia journal called Padika. A San Francisco State University professor, Gilbert Hurt, is quoted saying, "The category child is a rhetorical device for inflaming what is really an irrational set of attitudes against pedophilia."
He said the word child is just a rhetorical device.
That's the quote provided. And John Money of Johns Hopkins, a very prominent sexologist, spoke of genuinely totally mutual sex between adult men and young boys.
Mutual. Between an adult and a child.
It represents this dangerous shift in academic discourse, trying to reframe abuse as something less abhorrent, even consensual.
That's beyond reframing. That sounds like justifying.
And it went further. A 1998 study in an American Psychological Association journal argued for value-neutral terms like adult-child sex for what they called willing encounters. One of the authors had previously written for Paideia.
An EPA journal argued for value-neutral terms.
Yes, and the book notes, alarmingly, that this study has already been used as evidence to defend accused child molesters in at least 3 court cases.
So academic language is being used in court to defend abusers.
It shows how academic discourse, maybe inadvertently or maybe not, can be co-opted to legitimize and defend abuse, giving it a kind of pseudoscientific cover.
Okay, shifting back to trafficking, the scale of this, how big is it?
Immense. Research cited in the book found about 20% of children we encountered in this study were being trafficked nationally by organized criminal units.
20% nationally.
Nationally. These kids often had false identity papers. A majority both use drugs and engage in drug sales. It's not random. It's a sophisticated nationwide network.
And the infrastructure needed for that must be huge.
Absolutely. The book calls it an immense and immensely profitable criminal enterprise. It requires recruiters, trainers, purveyors of false documents, transporters, money collectors, enforcers, corrupt public officials, informers, guides, and crew members.
Corrupt officials are part of it?
That's part of the necessary infrastructure described. And crucially, approximately 10% of pimps in the U.S. are tied into international sex crime networks, which are also connected to international drug networks.
So sex trafficking and drug trafficking are linked.
Highly interconnected, sharing infrastructure, personnel, routes. It's an underworld ecosystem.
And this is where McGowan makes a really big leap, connecting it to intelligence agencies.
He does. He argues that since America's Central Intelligence Agency plays a central role in the international drug trade, a claim he supports elsewhere, it would logically follow that that same organization would be deeply involved in the equally lucrative international trade in children.
Wow. That's a massive accusation. The CIA involved in child trafficking.
It's a bold, deeply troubling claim, suggesting that institutions designed to protect might, through their alleged involvement in the drug trade, be implicated in, or at least turn a blind eye to, this vast network of child exploitation.
Okay, let's pivot to part 3. Cover-ups, blackmail, untimely deaths focusing on alleged U.S. high-level complicity.
Right, and the book details a specific, mostly forgotten U.S. scandal to illustrate this, the Craig Spence case.
Craig Spence, what was that?
A Washington, D.C. callboy ring in the late 80s. Spence, the ringleader, had taken some of his callboy escorts on private late-night tours of the White House.
Late-night tours of the White House. With callboys. How?
Apparently cleared by a uniformed Secret Service guard, and Spence even hinted that the tours were arranged by the National Security Advisor to then Vice President George H.W. Bush, Donald Gregg.
Donald Gregg. Bush Sr.'s National Security Advisor arranged these tours.
That was the hint Spence dropped, according to the source. So this wasn't just some underground thing. It touched the absolute highest levels of power.
Okay, so why? What was the alleged purpose?
McGowan suggests allegations quietly arose that the callboy ring and Spence's parties were part of a CIA sexual blackmail operation.
Another CIA connection.
That's the allegation. Spence's mansion was reportedly overflowing with surveillance equipment, including hidden cameras and microphones and an abundance of two-way mirrors. Cocaine flowed freely. Spence might have even been involved in bringing drugs in from El Salvador.
So surveillance, drugs, sex. Classic blackmail setup.
Exactly. An operation seemingly designed not just for vice, but specifically to compromise and control powerful figures.
What did the media do with this story? White House tours? CIA blackmail? Sounds huge.
You'd think, but the Spence story never really registered on the national media's radar screen. Incredibly, it was completely ignored by such pillars of the purportedly liberal press as the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Los Angeles Times.
Ignored. By the Post and Times. How is that possible?
That silence is deafening, isn't it? The book strongly implies it was a coordinated suppression of the story.
And the cover-up. What happened officially?
Swift and effective, according to McGowan. Some 20,000 documents pertaining to the case were sealed by court order, and the U.S. Attorney's Office issued a gag order.
Documents sealed, gag order, standard procedure for a cover-up.
And then Spence himself turned up dead in a Boston hotel less than 5 months after the story first broke.
Dead? How?
Officially, maybe suicide, but he'd reportedly told a friend, "I may be disappearing soon. It will be sudden. It may appear to be a suicide, but it won't be."
He predicted it wouldn't look like suicide.
And he was apparently about to give lurid details of Washington's bisexual wonderland to Penthouse magazine. His death, in that context, with that forewarning, it suggests a deliberate silencing.
And there was something bizarre about funeral homes.
Yeah, a weird side note. Several people linked to the ring, like Robert Chambers, a funeral director, and Henry Vinson, a mortician, former coroner, had ties to the death industry. Vinson even faked his death while under investigation.
Faked his death. Okay, that's just weird. Adds another sinister layer.
It does, and it raises the question, does this pattern of suppression, suspicious deaths, go beyond Spence?
The book, The Franklin Cover-Up.
Exactly, by State Senator John DeCamp. It presented a compelling body of evidence of child abuse charges in Nebraska involving prominent figures and a massive cover-up by the FBI, local police, a grand jury, and of course the ever-compliant media.
A cover-up involving the FBI and local police.
That's the claim. Systemic effort involving multiple levels of government and law enforcement to bury the truth.
And untimely deaths there too.
Shockingly, yes. The cover-up allegedly involved the untimely deaths of at least 15 key players.
15,
including the Franklin Committee investigator, Gary Caradori. His private plane was blown out of the sky. Him and his 8-year-old son were on board.
Blown out of the sky. Like a bomb.
That's the implication. Caradori had been threatened. He told his brother he had a key piece of evidence, so damaging, if they knew he had it, they'd kill him.
So he knew the risk, and he was killed. Echoes of Spence.
It suggests the stakes were incredibly high, and exposing the truth was lethal.
Okay, in another case, the Presidio, an Army daycare center.
Yeah, the Presidio Child Development Center in San Francisco, run by the U.S. Army. Allegations of abuse there. A parent found medical evidence confirming her 3-year-old son had been anally raped, the rapist. Identified as a teacher, Mr. Gary.
Inside an Army facility, you'd expect swift action.
You would. But the official response was stonewalling. It took the Army almost a month to notify the parents of other children. The FBI never interviewed her or her son, despite clear medical proof.
Never interviewed them. Why not?
It's not explained, but it fits the pattern of inaction. Meanwhile, kids at the center showed severe trauma symptoms. Sexually provocative language and sexually inappropriate behavior. Clear signs, but official channels failed.
The parents must have been desperate.
Palpably. One father is quoted saying, "When something about the Presidio comes on TV, I want to blow someone away." Just raw anger and helplessness.
And there's a name that pops up here, Michael Aquino.
Yes, LT Kerr, Michael Aquino. The book states he was again identified as a key figure in organized pedophile child pornography rings, and again questioned in connection with child abuse investigations years later. Identified by children in multiple cities, often at locations where ritual abuse erupted.
And he was military intelligence, linked to Oliver North.
He was also identified as an operative in LT Kerr and Oliver North's alleged drug smuggling operation. It draws this really unsettling line. Military intelligence, alleged satanic cults, drug running, child abuse networks, all potentially intersecting.
Okay, let's talk McMartin Preschool. That case is infamous.
Absolutely. The book states an astounding 460 children reported being sexually abused at the 3 closely linked Manhattan Beach schools.
460. It's unbelievable.
A full 80% displayed physical symptoms. Things like vaginal or rectal scarring, anal bleeding, painful bowel movements, the anal wick reflex linked to violent penetration, stark, widespread physical evidence.
So not just stories, actual physical evidence on most kids.
Exactly. And the stories told by the victim witnesses were remarkably similar, detailed, consistent. And it wasn't just preschoolers. Former students in their teens and 20s came forward, and their stories corroborated those of the children.
What about the tunnels? The kids talked about tunnels under the school.
Yes, consistently. They spoke of tunnels under the property by which they could be secretly transported. But this detail was repeatedly used by authorities and the media to discredit them. Like, oh, kids imagining tunnels, how ridiculous.
Okay, but were there tunnels?
This is where McGowan drops a bombshell. He says, the fact that the children repeatedly told stories of tunnels was frequently cited as proof that the children's stories were fabrications. But while it is true that the investigation commissioned by the district attorney's office found no evidence of tunnels, another investigation ignored by the media certainly did.
Another investigation found tunnels, ignored by the media.
That's the claim. Devastating evidence, complete with photographs and maps of the tunnel complex, was known to the local and national press, but it was never reported.
They knew there were tunnels and didn't report it. Why?
McGowan argues the denial was essential. The denial of the tunnels is necessary to maintain the illusion that the children were not credible witnesses, that illusion being an essential component of the cover-up. If the tunnels were real, the kids' stories suddenly become terrifyingly plausible.
It changes everything.
Completely. The book also highlights how these kids could accurately describe the look, smell, texture, and colors of human viscera, and a wide variety of unconventional human sexual practices. Knowledge preschoolers shouldn't have, unless they'd witnessed or experienced these things.
That kind of specific knowledge, it's hard to fake.
Extremely hard. It profoundly challenges the fabricated stories narrative.
And this wasn't just McMartin. A police officer noted similar patterns elsewhere.
Yes, San Francisco police officer Sandy Gallant. Her 1985 report noted similarities in numerous ritual abuse cases around the country and in Canada. She spoke of the strong probability that there exists a network of people in this country involved in the sexual abuse and possible homicides of young children for ritualistic or sacrificial purposes.
A nationwide network involved in ritual abuse and possibly murder.
That was her professional conclusion based on the patterns she was seeing across jurisdictions.
And even when convictions happened, like in the Country Walk case.
Right. Frank Fuster was convicted of horrific abuse. But the book notes at least 2 other adults were involved. And the state knew the identity of one of them, but he was never charged with any crimes.
Why not charge the other known abuser?
Again, it suggests selective justice protecting certain individuals connected to these networks, even with evidence.
Okay, this is incredibly dark. Let's move to part 4, reevaluating serial killers. The book argues the whole concept might be a myth.
Yeah, it challenges the standard narrative head-on. McGowan argues the myth of the serial killer, this idea of a lone individual driven by private demons acting alone, often does not even come close to matching the profile of what he was supposed to be.
So the profile we all know might be wrong.
Or at least not applicable in many famous cases. He uses Henry Lee Lucas as a prime example. The official story is the lone drifter killer, right?
Right. Confessed to hundreds of murders.
But it was officially acknowledged that Lucas worked with not just one, but at times as many as 3 accomplices. Not so lone.
Okay, accomplices. But the killings themselves.
Wildly inconsistent. His victims had little, if anything, in common. Kids, elderly, men, women, all races. His methods, all over the place. Bludgeoning, stabbing, strangulation, shooting, suffocation, sexual abuse, cannibalism.
That doesn't sound like a typical serial killer signature at all. They usually have a type, a method.
Exactly. It directly contradicts the neat profile. But McGowan finds a different kind of signature in many cases.
What's that?
A small caliber contact wound to the head, usually to the side of the head. He says this has long been the mark of a professional assassin.
Why small caliber, like a .22?
Easy to conceal, easy to silence, and the bullet often deforms so much on impact it's virtually impossible to trace or to match up to any particular gun. Very clean, professionally speaking.
So, execution style, not random rage.
That's the argument. He states, the vast majority of the victims of the serial killers profiled herein were killed either by means of a weapon of opportunity or they were shot in the head with a small caliber weapon execution style. No specific victim type, no consistent pattern, suggesting a different motive.
Like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Yeah, the book points out most of the Night Stalker victims were killed with contact wounds from a small caliber handgun to the left side of the head while they slept. Richard Chase, the vampire of Sacramento, also used a .22 caliber contact wound to the left side of the head. That specific signature keeps popping up.
Okay, let's look at some infamous cases through this lens. Back to Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. Lucas described being part of a cult.
A nationwide satanic cult, he claimed. Said he was trained in a mobile paramilitary training camp in the Florida Everglades. Trained in abduction and arson techniques, as well as in the fine art of killing.
Paramilitary training for a cult.
That was his story. He claimed he worked as a contract killer and abducted children, delivering them to a ranch near Juarez, Mexico for child porn and ritual sacrifices. This is way beyond a lone nut. It's an organized operative.
And Toole's story matched.
Disturbingly so. Childhood of satanic ritual abuse, forced sex, eating dog meat, digging up bones with his grandmother for devil worship, hearing voices. Both had these incomprehensibly abusive childhoods, often prostituted by their mothers, which connects back to that trauma-based mind control idea.
And Lucas got inexplicable leniency.
Yeah, paroled even after telling the board he'd kill again. McGowan even connects Lucas to Jonestown, arguing Jonestown was an MK Ultra-Ray project involving mass murder and a cleanup operation where someone with Lucas's alleged talents would be useful.
Jonestown as MK Ultra-Ray. Wow, okay, the Manson family. The book links Manson to multiple groups.
Deep connections, not just the Process Church, but the Church of Satan, the Solar Lodge of the OTO, an occult group, even Scientology, plus occult-oriented biker gangs.
So he wasn't just some isolated cult leader.
Far from it, according to this source. He was allegedly deeply involved in a number of criminal enterprises, called a drug dealer and contract killer, involved in underworld crime, murder-for-hire rings, and child pornography. He even supposedly consulted for Universal Studios on a movie about Christ.
A religious consultant.
Manson. That's the claim. And Manson himself allegedly said that Tate LaBianca victims deserve to die. They were involved in kiddie porn.
He accused them of being involved in child porn.
Yes. And the book details connections between the killers and victims. Victim Jay Sebring introduced Sammy Davis Jr. to the Church of Satan. Sharon Tate was supposedly initiated into witchcraft. Sammy Davis Jr. said, everyone there had at one time or another been into Satanism, plus shared interests in drug trafficking among killers and victims like Frykowski, Folger, Tate, LaBianca, Sebring.
So they all knew each other, involved in the same scenes.
It suggests intertwined relationships and illicit activities, not just random violence.
And the police response.
Astounding inaction, according to McGowan. LAPD had an eyewitness, the murder weapon, statements implicating the killers, yet they chose not to act on any of this for a period of several months.
Months? Why wait?
The book implies a deliberate delay, and the trial was chaos. Lead defense attorney, inexperienced, went missing, turned up dead the day sentences were returned.
The defense attorney died.
Yes. The defense team then rested their case without bothering to actually present one. Even Nixon declared Manson guilty on TV, almost causing a mistrial. It all points to a managed process, not real justice.
Okay, Santa Cruz killers, Kemper and Mullen. The book calls Santa Cruz a hotbed.
Yeah, a surprising number of serial killers operated there. And Kemper and Mullen had these strangely parallel lives, both sons of WWII heroes, NRA firearms training, time in mental institutions, adjoining jail cells, same lawyer, same psychiatrist, same prosecutor.
That's a lot of coincidences.
It is. And both ended up at Vacaville Medical Facility, noted as a hotbed of covert intelligence operations.
Vacaville again, and Mullen showed mind control signs.
Yes. Diagnosed with MPDED, engaged in backward writing, which the book calls a hypnotically conditioned skill frequently indicative of mind control programming. He talked about receiving electroshock treatments on Maui, where a supposed mind control project was specifically aimed at creating serial killers.
A project to create serial killers on Maui.
That's what Mullen revealed, according to the source. And his victims, often known drug dealers, killed execution style with .22 rounds. It fits the pattern. Engineered psychosis turned into a weapon.
And his trial was weird, too.
Unbelievably so. The judge left not guilty off the list of possible verdicts for the jury. The defense lawyer basically declared him guilty in the opening statement, didn't even try to defend him.
So ensuring a conviction from the start.
Looks like it.
Okay, Richard Speck. The book questions how one guy subdued 9 women?
Yeah, it finds the official story physically implausible. It truly boggles the mind how one man was able to single-handedly subdue 9 women, bind them all, and then systematically kill all but one of them over several hours in a confined space.
It does seem impossible for one person.
And the survivor, Cora Amuro, claimed Speck had a gun, but no evidence was ever found indicating that a gun was used. Her testimony suggested he lost count, which is how she survived. The police identification procedure was questionable, putting her alone with him right after the trauma. Plus, an illegal and unfair jury selection and a gag order hid the case's weaknesses. Systemic manipulation again.
John Wayne Gacy. Politically connected.
Very. A fixture in Chicago Democratic Party circles. Even met First Lady Rosalind Carter face-to-face. His JC chapter was allegedly involved in prostitution, pornography, and various other crimes of vice. High connections for such a figure.
And the police surveillance was strange.
Surreal. He was seen whining and dining his alleged pursuers, drove recklessly at high speeds. Amazingly, he was never stopped. Evidence in his home included police badges, chloroform, a victim's ring. The level of forbearance is suspicious.
And he claimed an alter ego did it. Jack Hanley.
Yes, classic dissociation. But here's the twist. The book notes, Hanley was one of their own. He had been a plainclothes detective with the Chicago Police Department since the late 1960s.
Wait, the alter ego Gacy named was a real Chicago cop.
That's the bombshell claim. And after Gacy's arrest, the homicide rate in Chicago soared, possibly indicating a large cleanup operation, suggests a network far beyond just Gacy.
Ted Bundy also showed dissociative signs.
Unmistakable signs, according to McGowan, that chameleon-like ability to alter his appearance. People said he just didn't even look like the same person at all. A judge called him a changeling, points to a fractured self consistent with these theories.
And his connections. Establishment ties.
Extensive. Worked at a crisis clinic with Ann Rule, interned as a psychiatric counselor on a federal grant, key organizer for a governor's re-election campaign, specifically to spy and gather intelligence on the governor's opponent. Worked for law enforcement entities.
Spying for a governor's campaign while working at a crisis clinic.
Highly unusual integration into the establishment for someone later outed as a serial killer. And though friends like Ann Rule suspected him, his trials had dubious evidence, manipulated lineups, put with older, heavier cops. His own lawyer called him a split personality in the final trial. Reinforces the idea of a manufactured narrative or a controlled individual.
Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer. The police in action here sounds extreme.
Possibly the most shocking example. Like others, he sought military police training but became a medic, known for dismembering bodies.
But the police interaction.
Almost unbelievable negligence or obstruction. A victim escapes, is found bleeding, terrified. 3 officers accompany the victim back to Dahmer's apartment. They noticed nothing amiss there.
Nothing amiss, but weren't there. Bodies.
There was allegedly a 3-day-old rotting corpse lying on the bed, with the attendant smell of death permeating the apartment. The officers purportedly saw nothing wrong and left the scene with the victim still in Dahmer's custody.
They left the victim with Dahmer, with a rotting corpse in the room. How is that possible?
It defies explanation unless it's deliberate. The victim's mother contacted police, FBI. Her concerns were dismissed, and she was told not to talk to the press. A system actively failing or actively covering up.
Arthur Shawcross, the Jhansi River killer. The book links him to Vietnam.
Directly. Claims his first 39 kills weren't considered crimes because the victims were all Vietnamese nationals and Arthur was just doing his job, terrorizing the Vietnamese people into acceding to U.S. demands.
His job? Terrorizing people in Vietnam.
Says it was the same job that everyone else involved in the Phoenix program was engaged in, that brutal CIA psychological warfare operation in Vietnam.
So his killing style was learned in the Phoenix program.
That's the chilling implication. Phoenix used rape, torture, mutilation, grotesque posing of bodies tactics indistinguishable, McGowan argues, from U.S. serial killer crime scenes. Shawcross himself, when asked how he killed so easily, reportedly said, "Ask Uncle Sam."
Ask Uncle Sam.
Wow. He got an honorable discharge, treatment from an Army psychiatrist, violated parole repeatedly without consequence. His defense claimed MPD. Under hypnosis, he spoke as a 13th century cannibal. Looks like combat trained, possibly programmed, enabled by the system.
Back to Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, linked to cults in Mexico.
Yes, McGowan says he arose from the very same cesspool that had spawned Henry Lee Lucas and the Matamoros and Juarez death cults. Visited Anton LaVey for inspiration. His father, a policeman in Juarez, Mexico. These connections point to a network.
And the killings seem professional.
A victim described him taking a military firing stance, firing a single shot without a word. The actions of a cold and mechanical professional assassin.
But the evidence against Ramirez was weak.
Abundant issues. Witnesses described someone who clearly did not fit Richard Ramirez. A cop stopped the suspect but failed to make the connection. Suspect drew a pentagram on the car before fleeing. No prints found in the impounded car. Hairs at one scene did not come from Ramirez. The only link for the infamous Avia shoes was rather obviously manufactured evidence.
Manufactured evidence.
That's the claim. And why would Ramirez, who left no prints at real crime scenes, suddenly leave pristine palms and fingerprints at another? Glaring contradiction.
The book covers so many cases with similar disturbing patterns. Kenneth Bianchi, Hillside Strangler.
Yeah, Bianchi frequently lapsed into trance-like states, set up shop as a therapist while supposedly getting cancer treatment. Tied to law enforcement, his new police chief was an ex-LAPD cop and friend of a victim's father. Psychiatrists, including Dr. Lunde, who pops up in other cases, examined him. A judge agreed with a covert operative, Martin Orrin, that Bianchi had faked both his hypnotism and his dissociative disorder just so his testimony could be admitted, because hypnotized testimony was inadmissible in California.
So they basically decided he wasn't hypnotized so they could use his testimony.
A manipulation of the legal process to get a conviction is how McGowan presents it.
Leonard Lake and Charles Eng, more veterans, cults.
Both Vietnam vets, involved in cults, snuff videos, drugs. Lake envisioned Operation Miranda bunkers with weapons, food, sex slaves for a new world order. Lake died by cyanide capsule during interrogation. His ex-wife and mother cleaned out the property before the official search, removing videotapes. Hundreds of bone fragments found, up to 25 victims. Tapes showed Lake and Eng torturing women. Systematic, organized horror, ending with self-termination.
And Bob Berdella in Kansas City, the neighborhood watch guy.
Right, liaison to police and youth homes. But his home had a constant flow of young men, site of unspecified medical experiments nearby. Task force leader Troy Cole, admitted former CIA employee.
Another CIA link.
Berdella's confessions were very carefully crafted, given in secret, tailored to conform to the state's version of events. He denied satanic links, quashed rumors of police involvement. Evidence included detailed torture logs, photos, tapes, contents never revealed, human skulls, vertebrae cut with a skill saw, looked like a tightly managed narrative hiding deeper connections.
Okay, part 5, the broader implications. Let's revisit the Phoenix program.
McGowan argues it's the blueprint. A CIA psych warfare op-ed in Vietnam to scare the hell out of the Vietnamese people.
Using barbaric techniques.
Rape, torture, mutilation, dismemberment, grotesque displays. The key point: the crime scenes of the Phoenix program were, in other words, indistinguishable from the crime scenes of America's serial killers. He gives that horrific example from El Salvador: decapitated heads on a table, baby's head with hands nailed to it, a template for domestic horrors, potentially.
And the geographic pattern? California, Texas, Florida.
Yeah, McGowan highlights how these 3 states are prominent in the stories of so many purported serial killers.
Why those 3?
He notes they are, coincidentally or not, rife with satanic cult activity, and coincidentally or not, the 3 points through which virtually all of the drugs trafficked through Mexico and Central and South America enter the United States.
Drugs, cults, and major entry points.
And he adds that 2 of these 3 points of entry have in recent years been under the political control of the Bush family. Plus, an organized crime pipeline moves drugs from Texas to Chicago, potentially explaining the recurrent phenomenon of spree and serial killers stalking that city. It suggests deep interconnection. Drugs, cults, political power, organized crime feeding these phenomena.
The overall theme seems to be systemic corruption.
Absolutely. A pattern of wholesale corruption of the criminal justice system. Ignored evidence, dropped charges, suppressed witnesses, destroyed evidence, weird judicial decisions, people set up as patsies or fall guys, a system controlling narratives, not always seeking truth.
And the serial killer narrative itself might be part of that control.
That's the argument. The science of profiling emerged with the term serial killer, creating these larger-than-life figures like Lucas, Berkowitz, Bundy. Maybe manufacturing monsters distracts from organized networks and systemic complicity.
Like the Kenneth McDuff case in Texas. Used to push prison reform.
Exactly. His release and subsequent killings were used to blame well-intentioned prison reforms. This fueled public anger, leading to the Texas Solution and McDuff laws, tougher sentencing, harsh parole, $2 billion for new prisons. Shows how a narrative, even a tragedy, can be weaponized to reshape policy.
So many unanswered questions remain, even in famous cases. John Benet Ramsey.
McGowan suggests the kidnapping was likely staged after the fact to cover up the accidental or intentional death. John Ramsey ensuring he discovered the body, compromising the scene, the undigested food in her stomach, the unidentified witness naming people who saw the murder, alleging ongoing influence of other children leads never fully pursued, according to the source.
And the Atlanta child murders.
An artificial list of victims, excluding adults, females, those weird unidentified white volunteers in paramilitary gear at search sites, a child porn ring owner linked to victims but never a suspect, the mysterious disappearance of fingerprints belonging to someone other than Wayne Williams from key evidence, all challenging the official story.
And McGowan ends that with a really dark question, a final solution.
Yeah, provocatively asking if the young Atlanta victims were doomed anyway. Could it be that their deaths were just the opening salvo of a final solution that is now quietly killing millions? suggesting a horrifyingly systematic elimination, moving beyond individual murders to a controlled agenda. It's a bleak thought presented in the book.
Okay. We have navigated some truly, truly unsettling territory today. A deep dive that really challenges the conventional wisdom around these infamous crimes.
Yeah.
What we've seen consistently emerge from this source material, from McGowan's book, is this idea that behind the headlines, behind the official stories, there's often this complex web, orchestrated control, hidden agendas, maybe systemic complicity.
It's a difficult picture to process for sure, but it's one that definitely invites us to, look closer, to demand more transparency maybe, and to question deeply. When the official story just leaves too many threads untied, too many lives unaccounted for, it makes you wonder about the nature of truth from official sources.
Absolutely. This deep dive, it wasn't about finding easy answers. We didn't really find any, did we?
Not easy ones.
It was about illuminating the uncomfortable questions that McGowan raises, questions that persist. So the final thought for you, our listener: what hidden truths might still lie beneath the most sensational headlines? Especially when the official story leaves so many questions open and that lone nut's profile just keeps falling apart. What narratives have you accepted without maybe a closer look? And what might you find if you started looking for the patterns the system, according to this book, tries so hard to hide?